Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Kritam Apayano Virahagatara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Binedus Tam Savabhutam Hidayam Munimanatosmi. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parara Lakshai Kiptascha Kamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Tavevasmi Najivami Tvayavinam Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. So we're going to begin by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanitya Bhavishta, Om Vishnupada Sto Tarasat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanitya Bhavishta, Om Vishnupada Asto Tatsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayana Gosvami Maharaj, under our exalted Rupa Nuga Guru Varga, all these humble Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. All right, so we're going to continue hearing about Brajmandal Parikrama, reading from the book of that same title, Sri Brajmandal Parikrama, second edition we're reading from, the slightly expanded and improved version. And today we're going to read from the chapter entitled How to Observe Brajmandal Parikrama. The chapter before this is kind of an overview of the geography of Vrindavan, all the different places, and not very easy to follow, just hearing it one after the other, after the other, after the other. You can read that on your own. But this is very good information, how to observe the parikrama. Right? And it begins with taking a vow at Vishram Ghat. And this is also important because being influenced by the material mind, what's the mind's business? To accept and reject, right? I like this, I don't like that. I want this, I don't want that. But usually our mind is evaluating things on the basis of material likes and material dislikes. And unfortunately, not being completely purified, the mind also does the same thing when it evaluates our spiritual practices, our spiritual opportunities. And it does that same thing with even something as amazing as the parikrama. And I can recount so many experiences, especially when I first went, both in 1976 and then in 1997. The challenges, it was very difficult at some times. But being under guidance, following, pure Vaishnavas, and then ultimately going through with it, reaping the benefits of parikrama, is extraordinary. So it begins with making a vow. And making a vow, that's why we reread it initially about Vrindavan, about that transcendental place, the glories of that place. And even though we only see the Drishyamana Prakash, the the material film that covers the real Vrindavan, we know that underneath it all is that eternal transcendental place of Krishna's pastimes. And the whole idea of Parikram is to make contact and connection with that eternal realm. And that can only be done under guidance. We cannot do Parikram. We cannot. The pure devotee can do Parikram. And if they guide us and take us along, then we can do Parikram, right? But independent of them, then what can we do? Then we're just seeing the streets, the motor cars, the scooters, the pigs, the apartment buildings, all of this. That's all we see. But even though we're not there directly, we can go there by our ears, by hearing. And if we have been there before, we can visualize. The impressions are eternal within the heart. They exist there eternally. And they can be invoked by this kata. And so the beginning of Parikram is a vow, a sankalpa. And Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana says that before starting Braj Mandal Parikram, one should take a vow, a sankalpa at Vishram Ghat in Mathura. Why? That's the place Mahaprabhu first went, right? When he did. When Rupa, Sanatan, Narottam, Srinivas, all of our acharyas, when descriptions of them, Jiva, Goswami, first going to Vrindavan, they all stopped at Vishram Ghat first, following in the footsteps of Mahaprabhu. And when we did this Parikrama under the guidance of Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana, that's also where we went. This vow should be made through the medium of a Vaishnava devoted to bhajan. Any devotee, a Tirtha Guru, or a Brajbasi priest who is simple-hearted, learned in the scripture and philosophical principles, virtuous, merciful, non-envious, and non-avaricious. When the vow is taken, Parikram may begin. So, in other words, even here there should be a via media, right? The transparent via media. Someone who is guiding you, and just like when we offer prasad, we're not offering it directly to Radha and Krishna, we're offering it to our gurus to offer to Radha and Krishna. So this vow through that purified priest and devotee, right? With these qualities, not just any panda who happens to be there collecting money or whatever, simple-hearted, learned in the scripture and philosophical principles, right? Virtuous, merciful, non-envious, and non-avaricious. There have always been pandas like this, Even if you read the description in the Chaitanya Bhagavat of Mahaprabhu going to Gaya to do Shraddha for his father, there's a description of how he was beset upon by the pandits for money and this and that. It goes, they take birth there. They are the guides, right? They have a genuine role. Pandas are very important. Their role is to guide people through the holy places, to introduce them, to give them appropriate kata. But over time, many of them just become entitled, feeling it's their birthright, a sense of superiority over all others that come. And their mood is that people should serve us rather than we should serve the people that are coming. They are actually given this opportunity to take birth in Vrindavan or Navadvip or wherever in a lineage which gives them that service. And it's a great opportunity. Gurudev, his pandas, he chose his pandas carefully in Vrindavan. They were ones in the line of the same pandas that his Guru Maharaj used, that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada used, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. One time when I was in Radhakund, I was with one godbrother, Prem Ras from France, and he had lived there in Vrindavan for many years, and he knew an old Brahmani widow whose husband was the Panda, one of the chief Pandas in that area, and their family had been doing it for generations and generations. And we went to her house, and she had a stack of books along one wall. And generally, when Pandas guide a group or a person, they'll get them to sign the book, right? So she had these books, and she showed us a book signed by Srila Maharaj in the early 50s, and a little inscription that he made. And she had others. She said somewhere in that pile was one signed by Bhaktivedanta Thakur, her husband's probably great-grandfather, perhaps, had taken Bhaktivedanta Thakur around, right? And those kind of pandas. And Gurudev had this panda in Nandagan, who was very nice, and then his son took over. When we would go, it was the son of the one who had been serving Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj before that. And he was very nice, very humble. He danced beautifully. He gave nice kata. And Gurudev liked him very much. One year, I was there with my godbrother, Padmanabha Maharaj, and we were at Nandagan, and we met the Panda there. He was there. And he invited us to his house. And his house was a little bit down the hill, right, because it's all up on a big hill. And we just went in, and there were like 4 or 5 of us, and completely unannounced, unprepared, his wife immediately made lunch for all of us, right? Simple Braj Basi lunch, very delicious, big Braj rotis and all that. And he told us the history of his family, that they had been there over 500 years. They'd been pandas there for over 500 years in that same house. Wow. And that, I just thought that was so wonderful, delightful, right? To have that connection. So, he grew up there. His whole world was that spot, that Nandagan, right? So, these kind of persons, right? And so what is the vow that we take? Well, we're going to hear different rules for Brajmandal Parikrama, what you should do and what you should not do. So generally, we were encouraged to make a vow in some way how we were going to increase or improve our service for that month. What we were going to do that was above and beyond what we normally do, right? It usually didn't include chanting more rounds because we'd be so busy at that time. We were lucky to do, prescribed rounds. But some behavior, some character, like I'm not going to criticize any Vaishnavas, right? I'm going to only speak the truth. I'm going to, whatever, just contemplating something. When you hear these rules, something may come and help you understand. And when we do our Manasi Parikrama, we can also go to Vishram Ghat in our minds, in our hearts, and we can also chant prayers to Jamuna Devi and make a vow, right? So what are the rules for Brajmandal Parikrama? While performing Parikrama, one should, as far as possible, observe certain positive and negative injunctions. That's sadhana bhakti, pravriti marg, and nivriti marg, right? Don't do this and do that. The positive injunctions are as follows: to speak the truth, to observe celibacy, to sleep on the ground, to forgive the offenses of others, to take bath in the holy rivers or ponds, to do achman, to accept only prasad offered to the Supreme Lord, and to perform Harinam Kirtan on Tulsi beads, or perform Harinam Sankirtan in the assembly of Vaishnavas. And that would be always a very important part of the Parikrama, that on the bus or before or after Parikrama, if there was time, you could chant rounds, but while we were walking or marching from one place to the other, Srila Gurudev always wanted us to do collective Sankirtan. And he didn't like that people would straggle in the back and chant on their japa beads. He wanted that you would engage in the Sankirtan, the collective kirtan. That was more powerful, more beneficial, and ultimately more service to the Dham. Because the Dham is a place where the chanting of the holy names is always going on. The residents of Vrindavan, they're always glorifying, chanting, remembering Krishna. And so by doing that in the collective parikram, we're absorbing ourselves in that mood together. And as Prahlad Maharaj has described, what Padma Purana, that it's more powerful than japa, collective chanting, 100 times more powerful. And it also prepares you for the next place. It also binds you emotionally to the group, right? I'm part of the group. That's why seva done collectively is so important in an ashram or anywhere, because then you become part of something more than yourself. If you just do solitary service, of course that's good, but to serve in the association of devotees is very important, very powerful. And it creates memories and relationships. If you're just by yourself, what relationships are you developing? What are you learning? You don't learn patience and tolerance, because being with devotees, just like being with anybody, you have to be a little patient and tolerant, because all the foibles and eccentricities that everybody has, and devotees, we're more eccentric than anybody. And we're a very diverse group. We come from all kinds of backgrounds. I mean, we used to joke that if we weren't all devotees, most of us would probably never have been friends. You know, why would I have hung out with this person or that person? Right? They don't match my material nature. But when you practice devotion, you find a greater bond, right? So it's very important, right? We have a comfort with being alone and chanting and all of that, being solitary. But real solitude means be in the company of like-minded Vaishnavas. Right? You can make more advancement that way. So we would be enjoined to do the Harinam collectively, right, at that time, always in the assembly of Vaishnavas. And he goes on. Let me just read those again so we don't forget them. Speak the truth, observe celibacy, sleep on the ground, forgive the offenses of others. Oh, especially because Parikrama, there's a lot of stress, being on the bus, waiting for your prasad, just wait for the shower. Everybody's in a rush. There's all kinds of stress. And people are tired and a little grumpy sometimes. They may say something inappropriate. Just be very gentle and forgiving. I remember the first Parikrama I went in 97 under the guidance of Srila Narayana Maharaj, and I was just off the boat. I mean, I hadn't been in that kind of thing for 15 years, really, and not being in India. And under the Gaudiya Math, it was very austere as well, very simple. And the Parikrama that year was a very hot year, and we were just going from one place to the next, and most of the katha was in Hindi and Bengali. So we're just sitting there, not able to understand a thing. Sometimes there was translation. There was no radios and translation yet. Just somebody afterwards would give a little summary. So you're sitting there for, 35, 40 minutes listening to something you can't understand with the sun beating down on your head, right? And then the jostle and the bustle to get into the line and be with everybody. And I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. And my mind is becoming very agitated. This is especially in the first week or two before I had settled in. And then my godbrother Urukram, who I knew from like 1971, who later became Padmanabha Maharaj, he said, I told him what's going on. He says, and then he told me what he does. I don't stress out about in the line. I just get there at my own pace. I find a spot of shade, and I just sit in the shade and relax while the katha is going on. And then when the English is going on, I listen very carefully. But if I'm in the shade and I'm comfortable, then, I just don't stress. Don't feel compelled to be in the front or do this or that. And then it took all the stress away. And he said, just, observe Vrindavan around you. Just appreciate the environment. Look for the good stuff. And I did that. So he says, forgive offenses, view everything positively. Take bath in the holy rivers or ponds. Do achman. Accept only prasad offered to the Supreme Lord. And perform Harinam Kirtan on Tulsi beads, or perform Harinam Sankirtan in the assembly of Vaishnavas. One should perform the Parikrama by properly respecting and worshipping the Brahmanas, the deities, sacred places, and the Supreme Lord's pastime places encountered during the course of the Parikrama. Right, so when you do get to those places, be very respectful. And Gurudev would say, when you go to those places, realize that Vrindavan, even though you can't see it, every plant, every creeper, every speck of dust is Chintamani, fully conscious, Chaitanya. Just like Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, all Vrindavan is Chaitanya Ras. We heard that earlier. So you can pray to these pastime places. You can interact. You are the witness of Krishna's Leela. When he was here, the Leela that's going on eternally. Please give me your mercy. And with that mood of supplication, humility, and service, you approach each of these places, right, with great appreciation. So now, coming to the negative injunctions. It is prohibited to become angry. Don't be yelling at people, right? To commit any violence towards trees, creepers, small shrubs. Right, he would tell you, we'd go to some places and sometimes the inclination would be to snap off a twig and take it home, right? No, don't do that. These are Krishna's associates. They're serving. When Krishna would walk through the Vrindavan forest, what would he do? He'd brush them lovingly with his hands as he walked by. He'd touch them with his bare lotus feet. He never wore shoes. He'd smile lovingly on the Vrindavan forest, right? So don't do that. Don't cows, right? And so forth. Even dogs, monkeys. Sometimes you have to, they misbehave. And so you have to, act appropriately. But don't indiscriminately be cruel to the animals of Vrindavan. Even the hogs. They're very fortunate. The hogs, they're more fortunate than us. We discriminate, right? Between that what we like, that what we don't like. The hogs, they'll even eat the stool of Vrindavan, right? They have no such kind of discrimination. They're serving the Dham in that way. So, don't dishonor Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, and so on. Don't disrespect the deities. It says don't use soap and oil. We used soap, but don't use fragrant oil. We cleansed ourselves with soap, but real pilgrims in the traditional style didn't do that. They would be bathing 3 times a day. What do they need it for? And you don't need those fragrant oils. Don't shave. Don't kill ants and other living entities. And don't involve yourself in disputes, and don't criticize others. Actually, these injunctions are good year-round, but especially during this month, and especially in Vrindavan. Now there's a whole description of the technical timing of the Parikrama. I'm not going to read that because it's all the different sampradayas and what they follow and what their timing is. But he just in the beginning says, Gaudiya Vaishnavas follow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's own journey through Braj. Hence, some people start after Vijay Dashami. Anyway, there's a whole description. Then, all the details of all the different places, and in the order that Mahaprabhu did, because when you're coming from Mathura, the first place you come to is Radhakund, right? Remember on the buses when you go from Vrindavan or Mathura, you go up towards Govardhan, and that's the first place you go to. So there's a beautiful picture of Vishram Ghat. Actually, it's very interesting. If you look at this picture, this photo, there's a painting that's in the British Museum of History, or whatever they call it, and it's a collection of paintings that were done in watercolor in the early 1800s. This wealthy British, person, he's probably the third or fourth child of a wealthy family. The first child inherits all the land and property, primogeniture. The next one joins the military and gets a big commission. They buy him a big commission, so he becomes an officer. The next one oftentimes will enter the priesthood. And the next one, if they got a next one, he just becomes a world traveler, a gentleman traveler, right? So the third or fourth child probably. Anyway, he was traveling all over India in the early 1800s, and the British Raj had established its supremacy. They could go anywhere. And he brought with him a very well-known artist, watercolor artist. And everywhere they went, the artist painted pictures of what it looked like then. And there's pictures of Govindaji Temple, right? Harappa, many of the famous archaeological sites, different spots in Vrindavan, Madan Mohan, how it looked. And there's also a picture from the vantage point of a boat of Vishram Ghat, right? And it looks pretty much the same, pretty much the same as it does now. Here, as he's starting this description, there's a quote about Mathura. Mathura Dham is blessed, being superior even to Vaikuntha, the holy abode of Sri Narayana. By residing in Mathura for only one day, a person attains devotion to Lord Hari, and by residing here 3 nights, one attains that most rare love of God, which is difficult to obtain even for great liberated souls. So that's another very important thing about this Parikrama. The spiritual samskars that are planted in the heart are so powerful. Even, we know, just even chanting one holy name, even glancing upon a pure devotee sets one on the path. But going to Vrindavan and doing Parikrama, the power of that, the result of that, in this life it's profoundly affecting, but in the next lives, amazing. So now we're going to hear about the glories of Sri Mathura. Very interesting background. There are 7 holy cities on the earth. Now, Mathura can mean what we know as that localized area of Mathura, where Krishna went after leaving Vrindavan, the place of the kings of Mathura. Originally Shatrughna, Ram's brother, went there to purify it and take it from the demons. It's been a sacred spot since time immemorial. And it was also a very important place, religious place, a place of scholars and a place of trade because of its place on the Jamuna. Armies would go through there. There's a lot of history in Mathura. So there are 7 holy cities on the earth that award liberation: Ayodhya, Mathura, Mayapuri, which is Hardwar, Kashi, Kanchi, Avantika, which is Ujjain, and Dwaravati, Dwarka. Of these, Mathura, the birthplace of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna Chandra, is the topmost. This abode not only awards liberation, but also bestows love of God, Bhagavat Prem. Mathura is the Supreme Lord's abode, consisting of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, and it is completely beyond the illusory energy. It is protected by the Sudarshan Chakra and is therefore not affected by the universal dissolution or other disruptions. Right, just like Navadvip endured during the Pralaya, right? Markandeya Rishi found himself washed onto the shore there when he was tossed and turned by the waves of that watery devastation. Mathura also, being non-different, also does not experience any decline or dissolution. What to speak of Vaikuntha, it is even more praiseworthy than Dwarka, which is ornamented by Sri Krishna's queens. Why? Because of its proximity to Vrindavan and the fact that Krishna took birth there. And, say Dwarka is, wonderful. Mathura is better, Vrindavan is best. But in Mathura, people had access to Vrindavan and could go back and forth. Merchants, tradespeople, the fruit seller woman, people like that would go back and forth. They know about Krishna in Vrindavan, in Mathura, the wives of the Brahmanas, right, that met Krishna. There's more sweetness in Mathura. So, the city of Mathura is never annihilated. In the beginning of Satyayug, the child Dhruva met Devarshi Narad here. And there's a place that we would go to, Dhruvatila, every year, and where that was taking place. Dhruva took bath in the Jamuna at Dhruvagat in Mathura and accepted the Nam mantra of the Lord from Narada Muni. Nearby at Madhuvan Maholi, he attained perfection by worshipping Bhagavan. Also, in Satyayuga, Durvas Rishi arrived here, while the devotee Marish Ambarish was in the course of breaking his vow of observing Ekadashi and Dwadasi. And it was here that Durvas realized Ambarish Maharaj's glory. Even today, Chakratirtha and Ambarish Tila stand as witnesses to how Ambarish Maharaj was protected by the Sudarshan Chakra. In 1997, when I first went to that Parikrama under Gurudev's guidance, I've mentioned this before. It's a cherished memory for me. Srila Narayana Maharaj had acquired land at this place called Durvas Tila. It's a little hill overlooking the Jamuna, nearby the bridge, the Jamuna bridge that crosses over into Mathura. That's on the left when you're looking at, and you can see Vishram Ghat below. And he was overseeing some construction that had, was just beginning. Some foundation was there, a little bit of walls. They were bringing up a center beam from the river, all done by hand. And a few people were able to go there in the morning. We heard that Srila Narayana Maharaj was going. Parikrama hadn't started yet. And there weren't lots of cars in those days. In those days, Gurudev had a car that he would take on Parikrama. Everybody else went by buses. And there was one other car that one devotee had. And some devotees were going to Mathura where Gurudev was going. And my good friend Pran Kishore, who I'd known since the early 70s also, was very close with Gurudev, and he said, "Hey, they're going over in a car. You want to go?" And I said, "Yeah," and about 20 of us crammed into this little tiny car. And we got over there, and everybody's walking around, and Gurudev was sitting on a table, one of those tables they use as a bed, a bench, everything, What? Okay. And he gestured for me to sit next to him. And, I had only met him briefly once in the Bay Area when he was there, in a little darshan. But he was very kind, and he gestured and had me sit down. He was very kind to Prabhupada disciples, right? He wanted to encourage us. And then he starts pointing towards the river. And he says, oh, that is where Satyavati met Parashara Muni, and Vyasadeva was born. Over there, across the river, is where Ambarish Maharaj's palace was, right? And he's just pointing out different places. So not manifest now, but he's pointing here and there and everywhere. I thought, oh, wow, how amazing. I thought, he can see all this. Right? So, and I was wrestling at that point. Well, how, everyone's saying, oh, he can be your Shiksha Guru, and I didn't understand Shiksha and Diksha and how that worked. And it's a big hurdle for many devotees because they think that somehow or other, if you take a Shiksha Guru, you're minimizing your relationship with your Diksha Guru somehow. Or you're transferring the affection you had for your Diksha Guru to your Shiksha Guru. But no such thing. In the hearts of advanced devotees, the relationship with Shiksha Guru only increases the affection and love for Diksha Guru, because they give you realization of your relationship with Diksha Guru, who your Diksha Guru is, so many things. So I was wrestling with that. And so he's just showing some affection and helping me come close like that. And it's very effective. So all of that, Ambarish Maharaj, Durvas Tila. Now there's a very beautiful temple. Tridani Maharaj was there when that was built, and he stayed there for some time. In Treta Yuga, on the order of Sri Ramachandra, Sri Shatrughna killed the son of the demon Madhu, Lavanasura, here. This pastime is well known. Right, when we go visit that, there's a whole story about that. In the Dwapara Yuga, Mathura became famous as the place of Sri Krishna's appearance and the site of his many pastimes. It is also well known that Sri Krishna, Dvaipayana Vedavyas, took birth here on the island of the Jamuna, which he pointed out. In Kali Yuga, the Supreme Lord Satchidananda Sri Godahari, resplendent with the luster and inner sentiments of Sri Radha, came to take darshan of Vrajadam. First he reached Mathura, where he took bath at Vishram Ghat, and then visited the pastime places within the 84 kroshas of Braj Mandala. Gaudiya literature describes that Sri Advaitacharya, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, Sri Lokanath Goswami, and Sri Bhugarbha Goswami arrived in Mathura before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's intimate associates, such as Sri Rup, Sri Sanatan, and other Goswamis, came to Mathura and Braj after him and roamed throughout the land. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhakti Ratnakara further describe that later all our Gaudiya Acharyas came to Mathura Braj Mandal. Yes, beautiful descriptions. The abundant glories of Mathura are described in the Puranas. Bhagavan Sri Keshav Dev is present in the heart of this abode, which is likened to the whorl of a lotus. On the northern petal in Vrindavan is Sri Govinda Dev, by whose darshan a person is forever liberated from the cycle of birth and death. The Govindaji temple, we go there all the time. Now there's another deity, the original Govindaji, he's in Jaipur, but this Pratibhu is non-different. It's a magnificent temple. It used to be 7 stories high. Right now it's only 1. It's described some places had 108 domes. Right? Smaller domes, of course. Even the center dome, carved from one stone, is the largest such dome in the world, made like that. Right? It's a beautiful temple, very ornately carved. And many pastimes with our acharyas happened there. On the eastern petal at Vishram Ghat is the form of the Lord named Vishranti. And on the southern petal is Adi Varahadev, who bestows all perfection. Bathing in any of Mathura's sacred waters destroys all the sins of any living entity. And each and every step taken in Mathura gives the same result as performing a horse sacrifice, Ashvamedha Yajna. You know how hard it is, how rare it is to perform an Ashvamedha Yajna? It said if you do 100 of them, you get the post of Lord Indra. Right? And there's stories. Maharaj Yudhishthira, he did 1, maybe up to 3, I forget. And Prithu Maharaj was going to do 100, but when he was about to complete the 100th, Indra kept getting in the way because he didn't want Prithu Maharaj to take his post. Finally, and it was a whole pastime, finally decided not to do it, so Indra wouldn't be disturbed. But it takes so much money, so much expense, so many expert brahmanas, so much time, and just one step in Mathura is the equal of that in terms of the purificatory capacity, right? The Supreme Lord himself says in the Adi Varaha Purana, O Vasundhara, certainly in all the 3 worlds, the hellish planets, the world of humans, and the celestial realm, nowhere is as dear to me as Mathura. He further states in the same Purana, O Vasundhara, during Chaturmasya, my time of sleep, all the oceans, lakes, and pilgrimage dwell in Mathura. Skanda Purana mentions that the result attained by residing in any other part of Bharatvarsha, India, for hundreds and thousands of years is attained simply by remembering the city of Mathura. So all the pilgrimages, all the places you can visit, if you do that for hundreds and thousands of years, just remembering Mathura, which we're doing here now, exceeds the benefit of all that. Whoever chants and fasts in Mathura becomes free from sin by taking darshan of Sri Krishna's birthplace. A sinful person who has killed a brahmana, who is a drunkard, who kills cows, or who has violated celibacy becomes free of these sins simply by circumambulating Mathura. All those who, even a killer of a brahmana. So be very careful about judging devotees for worldly sinful activities if they're deeply absorbed in devotional service sincerely, and they're doing things like this, serving in Mathura, doing Parikrama, those sins are vanquished. All those who come from other far-off places to perform Mathura Parikrama and have darshan of the pastime places here become free from all kinds of sins. Not only that, if one simply takes a vow to reside in Mathura, he becomes free from all kinds of material entanglements. Just take the vow, I want to live in Mathura. It is written in the Padma Purana that one who desires to have darshan of Mathura but leaves his body before getting this opportunity will surely take birth in Mathura in a future life. So we're cultivating now, by this remembrance, by this desire that we're cultivating, the opportunity that we will also one day take birth in Mathura. That means the greater Vrindavan, just doesn't mean the city of Mathura. Mathura Mandala, it means all of Vrindavan. There's not the slightest doubt about this. Only those with firm, unshakable devotion for Sri Krishna and who are objects of his abundant mercy can have attachment to this Mathura Puri, which is beyond the Mathura world. In the Vayu Purana, it is written that Mathura Mandala is within the 84 kroshas of Braj Mandala, and that the Supreme Lord Sri Hari himself eternally resides here. The Vayu Purana further states that Mathura Dham is blessed, being superior even to Vaikuntha, the holy abode of Sri Narayana. By residing in Mathura for only one day, a person attains devotion to Lord Hari, and by residing here for 3 nights, one attains the most rare love of God, which is difficult to obtain even for great liberated souls. Sri Rupa Goswami has written in Sri Mathura Mahatmya, O Avanti, become ready with a spittoon in your hands. O Mayapuri, a spittoon means a lota. Not like a, saloon spittoon full of, tobacco and stuff. It means bring your lota. They look the same, right? O Mayapuri, become ready to fan with a chamra. O Kanchi, take an umbrella in your hand. O Kashi, hold wooden sandals in your hands and be ready. O Ayodhya, do not be afraid anymore. O Dwarka, do not chant any prayers today. This Mathura Devi, who today has become the chief queen of Sri Krishna, the great king of kings, is pleased with all of you maid servants. All right, so stop here. Tomorrow there'll be a description of Krishna's birthplace. And it's appropriate to read this because this is not part of our month-long Parikrama. We visit the Mathura pastime places. Generally, we would do it just before Kartik month starts. We'd spend some days in Mathura and go to the different places, Vishram Ghat, the Janmastan, and all of that. So we'll stop here. Stop this recording. Here we go. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Gurudev, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Mathura Mandala, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.